Friends, today we will go through Module 4, that is Water Governance and Water Policy. We will discuss regarding the introduction and legal framework of water governance and water policy. Coping with future water challenges raises not only the question of what to do, but also who does what, why, at which level of government, and how. So, there are the questions regarding the governance of water resource. So these questions are what to do, who does what, why, and at which level of the government, and how these questions will be answered in the water governance and water policies. Coping with the current and future challenges requires Coping with the current and future challenges of water resource requires robust public policies, targeting measurable objectives in predetermined time schedules at the appropriate scale, re- relying on a clear assignment of duties across responsible authorities and subject to regular monitoring and evaluation. So there should be a clear assignment of the duties and responsibility to different authorities to manage the water, and also we should have regular monitoring and evaluation of the process. Policy responses will only be viable if they are coherent, if stakeholders are properly engaged, if well designed regulatory frameworks are in place, if there is adequate accessible information, and if there is sufficient capacity, integrity, and transparency. So, the policy responsible will only be viable if the policy responses will hold good only if they are consistent and they are properly the stakeholders are properly engaged in the process, well designed regulatory frameworks are formed, adequate accessible information is available, and there is sufficient capacity building as well as integrity and transparency in the system. Water governance can greatly contribute to the design and implementation of such policies in a shared responsibility across levels of government, civil society, business, and broader range of stakeholders who have an important role to play alongside policymakers. So, water governance contributes for the implementation of the policies, and is also for framing the policies in a shared responsibility. The responsibilities are shared between the government, there is a civil society, and the business people, and the broader range of stakeholders, that is the people who are involved in the management as well as in the use of water, who have an impact, who have an important role to play alongside policymakers. So these are the group of people who play a vital role in policy making along with the policymakers. So how the water governance is defined? Water governance refers to the different political, social, and administrative mechanisms that must be in place to develop and manage water resources and the diversity of water services at different levels of society. We know there is a diversity in the water service, right? Because it is used for different purposes and at all levels of the society, at different levels of the society. So the governance refers to the different political, social, and administrative mechanisms. So it needs all the mechanisms for the management, for decision making, political, for using social, and for managing administrative mechanisms are to be developed under water governance. Water governance has a range of political, social, economic, and administrative systems that are in place to develop and manage water resources and the delivery of services at different levels of society. This definition is set by UNDP, that is United Nations Development Programme. So policy is the attempts to reach specific goals with certain means and certain time paths. So policy means it attempts to reach the specific goals with a certain meanings and with a certain time path. So water policies in India, historical background. British era In 1866, the government decided that the future irrigation projects should be constructed by the states with their own agencies and financing. So during 1866 only, the irrigation projects were made the policies of the state governments, and they have to implement with their own finance as well as the agencies. During 1935, Government of India Act 1935 for water resources was developed. This act transferred the control on the subject of irrigation from center to state. The center will only intervene where is dispute between neighboring provinces. So an act was formulated called as the Government of India Act 1935, which stated the subject of irrigation is of the state responsibility and center will only intervene to solve the disputes. In 1980, National Water Resource Council was constituted. This council prepared the National Water Policy in 1987, in which a comprehensive statement on various policy issues were considered. So during 1980, a National Water Resource Council was formulated or constituted, and it prepared the first national water policy in 1987 with a comprehensive statement on various issues. The following are the main issues: irrigation management, operation and procedural changes. It emphasizes the need of state water policy in accordance with national water policy. So the NWRC emphasizes that the state water policy should be in line with or in accordance with the national water policy. Legal framework for water or water resource. International water law includes a number of instruments. They may not all apply directly in India but contribute in various ways to the development of water law at the international as well as national levels. So, based on the international law instruments or the legal instruments or the legal framework, our country is also framing the water laws. For many years, international water law included mostly treaties concerning navigation in international rivers, which constituted one of the early areas of collaboration among states. So, the international water laws earlier emphasized only the issue of navigation because the navigation takes across the globe. So, they wanted some international laws to enact this navigation. So, in the early areas of collaboration among the states, so that provided a collaboration between among different countries in the early year in these areas. Legal frameworks play an important role in the management of water resource at a range of scales from local and national legislation covering from domestic use to international treaties that cover waters shared by sovereign nations. So legal framework it spreads over from local to national legislation and also from the also for in the sense of uses from domestic use to international treaties that cover water shared by sovereign nations. So some of the rivers which they flow through different nations and there needs to be the water needs to be shared and that needs an legal framework for sharing. Water law, national and international, serves three functions. So these laws and acts they serve the following three functions. It defines and identifies the legal rights and obligations of public and private water users tied to water use and provides the perspective parameters for resource development and management to promote the public interest. So it identifies the legal rights and obligations of the public as well as the private water users tied to the water use and provides perspective for prescriptive parameters. So it also provides, it suggests some parameters for resource development and management. It provides tools for ensuring the continuous integrity of the regime, that is, through governance structures, mechanisms for monitoring, evaluating, and facilitating compliances and dispute prevention and settlement. So it provides tools. So these water laws or national policies will provide tools for ensuring the integrity of the management or the integrity of the system through governance structures. So it provides the organizational structures, mechanisms for monitoring, evaluating and facilitating compliance, also dispute prevention and settlement. It allows for modification of the existing regime in order to be able to adapt to changing needs and circumstances. So it also provides a platform, and these policies will be able to adopt the changing needs and the circumstances. It is important to have a cross-sectoral overview of all laws that apply in order to avoid conflicting rules. This is sometimes a difficult exercise. So, when we integrate the water management system, there are different sectors, and each sector is having its own laws and acts. Sometimes they may conflict with each other, so you have to integrate the legal framework also along the different sectors, or there should be a cross-sectoral overview of the laws. This is a bit difficult, but it has to be, this exercise had to be done. The following are the few key considerations on approaching legal frameworks. Legal frameworks, national and international, are an important and integral part of effective integrated water resource management. So the legal frameworks are the integral part of the water resource management. Legal frameworks ideally should deal with the entire water body or basin's water resource, whether it is surface or groundwater. So it takes into account both the surface and groundwater for dealing with the problems of the entire basin. Thus, legal regimes should be devised at a range of scales from international, regional, and national. So, the legal regime should be devised at a range of scales. So, the scales, the boundaries may be defined by the international, where water body is shared by more than one country or state. Regional, where regional legal regimes apply, such as, for example, with European Union, and national, with nation states where domestic legislation applies. The legal framework should be transparent, flexible, and capable of evolving to meet changing circumstances. So the legal framework should not be rigid. They should be accommodative to the evolving changes in the circumstances. Water laws should recognize the access to water as a human right, and water to be a finite and vulnerable resource, and, and as an economic good and a natural resource having cultural, social, and environment values. So the legal frameworks, while enacting the policies and laws, should keep in mind that water is water as a human right. So it is a basic human right, and it is a resource which is finite and vulnerable in nature, and it is to be treated as an economic good and a natural resource having the cultural, social, and environmental values. Lawmaking is a political and socio-economic activity and should be concerned with both efficiency and equity. Since lawmaking involves both political and socio-economic activity, so it should be concerned with the efficiency as well as equity. Legal frameworks thus need to take into account customary laws and find ways to reconcile customary practices and statutory rights and obligations if they want to be effective and equitable. So already we must be having some customary laws which are in practice. So they come by practice, they are not written laws. So the legal frameworks thus need to take into account such customary practices and laws and reconcile the customary practices and statutory rights and obligations if they want to be effective and equitable. Also, we should have some statutory rights and obligations for the effective and equitable use of water resources. Implementation and enforcement mechanisms should be selected to accommodate differences in national circumstances. Implementation and enforcement mechanisms should be selected to accommodate difference in national circumstances, recognizing the complexity of water management and aimed at facilitating compliances. Dispute avoidance and settlement mechanisms are part of the implementation enforcement spectrum. The integrated management of water resource, ideally across the entire basin, requires the consideration of a range of legal issues from international water law to domestic legislation and administrative procedures. So integrated management that needs the consideration across the different sectors over the entire basin that may extend from international water law to domestic legislation and administrative procedures. In this regard, the framing of water related laws should include provisions and operational mechanisms that authorize regulating multiple uses and aimed also at promoting the conservation and protection of the resource. So, the framing of the water related laws should have the provisions for conservation and protection of the resource and operational mechanisms that authorize the regulating the multiple use, because water has got many uses, so they have to be regulated. So the legal framework should provide an authority for regulating the multiple uses of the water resource. The law must balance economic, environmental, ecosystem, social and cultural demands and establish norms and standards for optimal regulation and sustainable management of water resources. So the law must balance economic, environmental, ecosystem, social and cultural demands and should establish norms and standards for the optimal regulation. Legal frameworks should address the following areas. So the legal framework should address the issues like water rights and allocation. Water is fugitive resource. Thus, a water right is the right to use water, not to own it. So, water right is the right to use the water, but not for owning the water resource. So, who is entitled to use water? Use what water, when, where, and how are challenging issues of law that must be covered in legal frameworks. So the legal framework should cover the issues like where, what type of water is to be used and where it is to be used, at what time it is to be used, and how it is to be used. So it has to address such challenging issues. And provisions dealing with water rights and allocations. Also, it should deal with the allocation of water also for different sectors. Under international water law, it is rule of customary and widespread treaty law that each state, up or downstream of a water course, is entitled to an equitable and reasonable use of water for an international water course. If a water course is all along in between the different countries or different states, then it goes by customary rule that the people or the users who are upstream and downstream are entitled to get an equitable and reasonable quantity of water. So that means the distribution should be equal. At the national level, concept of property law have been used in the management of water resource to ensure certainty and consistency of water use in the form of water rights. So at national level, so the concept of property law. So we have already got some enactments regarding properties. So these property laws have been used in the management of water resource also to ensure the certainty and consistency of water use. So we need to have some consistency and certainty in using the water. So these legal frameworks are based or they are similar to the concept of property law which we are having. However, it is also recognized that water is different from land and water rights are different to land rights. Even though the laws are framed based on the property acts, but water is different from land and water rights are to be different than the land rights. Because the resource must be shared among multiple users, water rights are correlative rather than exclusive. So the water laws are correlative. They are not exclusive laws, but they are having a correlation between different water uses and water rights. Water rights at the national level are managed through water allocation regimes, with the government bodies acting as trustees or regulators for water source. Water rights at the national level are managed through water allocation regimes. So the main duty of the national level or the national levels are to allocate the water for different sectors, and the government bodies acting as trustees or regulators of water resources. So there should be some organizational framework of the government who act as a trustee or regulate the water resource. Water quality. The legal framework for water quality relates to the biological and chemical composition and physical conditions of raw water quality. So we need to define some water quality standards. So the legal framework for water quality relates to the parameters like biological and chemical composition and physical conditions of the raw water available. Raw water quality is affected by human activities that can be grouped into two categories: point source and diffused pollutions. So water quality is actually the fresh water is manipulated by the human activities and it is polluted, and the two sources of pollution are, one is point, another is diffuse or the diffuse pollution or the non-point sources. Legislation can regulate such activities through prohibiting contaminants, the use of licenses, permits or authorizations, and zoning for protection areas. So the legislation should regulate such human activities by prohibiting contaminants and providing providing user licenses, permits and authorizations, and zoning of protection areas. So the areas can also be zoned like industrial, domestic, etc., for the purpose of better regulation of the human activities. Water services. Water services in this context refer to the supply of water for domestic or industrial needs and for sanitation. So water service means it is the distribution or the supply of water for the domestic or industrial or for the sanitation purpose. It includes the abstraction, treatment and distribution of water as well as the collection, treatment and disposal of sewage through a sewage system. sewage system or direct on-site sanitation. So it includes the abstraction, that means the different uses, treatment and distribution of water, and collection, treatment and disposal of the sewage through a sewage system or of the on-site collection, on-site sanitation programs. The provisions for legislating and regulating water services include the structure, ownership and control of the industry, specification of duties to supply and standards of supply, economic regulations of tariffs, customer services, water efficiency. So, the legislative framework or the laws should make the provisions for regulating the water services, such as ownership and control of the water industry, specification of duties to supply and standards of supply, regulation of the tariffs, customer services, and the efficiency of water use. Land use. Land use planning and regulation is vital for safeguarding environmentally vulnerable areas such as wetlands and riverine ecosystem. So we should have the land use planning also for regulating the and safeguarding the vulnerable areas like wetlands and riverine ecosystems, and keeping in mind the environmental sustainability. Some of the regulatory measures in place include zoning, building regulations and construction permits, nature prevention areas, nature preservation areas, specific soil protection and erosion control measures. So these regulatory measures include the regulations of the construction and building regulations, and the area zoning of different sectors, specific soil protection and soil erosion control measures. Protecting freshwater ecosystem resources. All human activities have environmental repercussions that impact freshwater ecosystems, and the value of protecting ecosystem functions and services wisely is widely recognized. So all human activities have the impact on the freshwater as well as the freshwater ecosystems, and there is a need to recognize the functional system for protecting the ecosystem. So protection requires regulations with respect to all aspects of human impacts on water related resources, in order to take into account flow regime, water quality, land use and freshwater fauna and flora. So protection requires regulating the human activities which are impacting, and the area which are to be taken into account are the flow regime. So that is the entire the catchment properties, water quality and the land use pattern, and as well as the freshwater fauna and flora. Implementation and enforcement. So in order to be effective, the rules devised under legal frameworks for water resource management must be fully implemented, and they are to be capable to be enforced. Where the rules are, that is, where the rules are not followed, they can be required to be followed through enforcement mechanism. So when you frame the laws and acts, they are to be implemented. Implementation, sometimes it is very difficult to implement because all the users may not obey because to protect their own interest. In such cases, the laws are to be enforced, and there should be an enforcement mechanism in the legal framework to practice the laws and acts in a proper manner. So implementation means it encompasses the activities of various government and non-governmental actors and institutions to put the requirements of law into practice. So implementation is putting the requirements of the laws into practice, and it is done through the many governmental and non-governmental actors. Enforcement, it refers to the range of measures taken by the competent authorities to ensure the actors failing to comply with the laws and regulations are brought back into the compliance. So enforcement is a mechanism where the actors who fail to follow the laws are brought to or made to follow it through measures like punishment or penalization, etc. Various actors and institutions play a distinct role in the implementation and enforcement of water related to legislation. So, to implement and enforce the water legislation, there are many institutions which play an important role. They may be both governmental or non governmental organizations. Mainly, the administrative and regulatory agencies remain primarily they remain the primary responsibilities of the government only, both implementation and enforcement of the legal framework. But sometimes NGOs or the citizens in individual capacity play a vital role by filing the complaints against the who do not follow the legal framework in context of water uses, and they can file the citizen suits in the appropriate courts. The role of customary law in IWRM. Customary law can be defined as evolved rules and practices that enable community members to distinguish between acceptable and unacceptable behavior. So, customary laws are in practice in certain communities to enable the community members to distinguish between their behaviors which may be acceptable or unacceptable to the society or to that community. It includes conventions and uses that people adhere to and methods for dispute settlements. So these customary laws include some conventional methods and usages and some practices which they are adhered to for the public dispute settlements. Customary law is generally produced by repetition in time and transmitted through socialization. So, customary law is not a written law, but it is produced by the repetitions in time. So, time and time they practice it and it is transmitted through the socialization in the society. It is carried out by a specific group of people in a certain territory where the people or part of the people accept those rules as binding upon them for any length of time. So these customary laws need not be universal or general. They may be restricted to a certain territory or a certain community which they accept them as binding upon them and for any length of time. Customary law is often tied to religious beliefs which reinforce compliance. Sometimes these laws are also tied to the religious beliefs of that particular community. Other mechanisms for penalizing misbehavior include monetary fines, public humiliation, or even ostracism by the community. So, in such practices, that that customary law practices, the mechanisms for penalizing the misbehaviors are the enforcement of penalty by monetary fines. Sometimes they may be publicly humiliated, or even it may go to the extent of ostracism by the community. Customary law is either entirely ignored or considered as a set of second order rights to be met by policy objectives after other claims have been satisfied. Customary law is either entirely ignored or considered as a set of second order rights. So, since customary laws are just they are the laws which are in practice, sometimes they may be ignored or they may be considered as a set of second order rights. So, their priority is next to the rights which are developed or the enacted in the legal framework. In some countries, customary law is recognized on a case to case basis as a normative system but not as a competing legal systems. So, in some countries, these customary laws are practiced depending on that particular circumstances or where it is accepted by the community of the people. Integrating legal frameworks for IWRM. The legal regime for managing water has to follow an integrative approach. On a practical level, this means the legal, policy, and institutional frameworks directly or indirectly affecting water resource management should be complementary, and regard must be given to the competing needs requirements of these different sectors in any water plan, policy, legislation, or permit to use water. So there are many departments are involved in the usage of water. It may be forestry, energy, industrial development, municipal water supply, agriculture, and environment. And all these sectors have their own laws and acts. Sometimes these may be conflicting or may be with differing interests. So these laws are also to be integrated. So there should be an integrative approach in developing a legal framework which is required for integrated water resource management. Integration remains a considerable challenge due to the fact that the management of water is relevant across multiple ministerial portfolios with little or no coordination between them. So, as we mentioned, there is a segregation between the ministries of forestry, power, industry, agriculture, and environment. These are different institutions governed by different ministries in the government. So, it is a difficult task to integrate among these different sectors, and they are held under different ministerial portfolios, and there may not be much coordination between these departments. So it is a complex procedure or a challenging procedure to integrate among these sectors. In order to be successful, the legal integration process has to be driven by strong policy and legislation at a national level that clearly outlines the roles and responsibilities of each tier of decision making. So, in order to be successful, the legal integration process has to be driven by strong policy. So, we need to have very robust national as well as state level water policies and legislation at a national level that clearly outlines the roles and responsibilities of each tier of decision making. Okay, thank you. We'll conclude.